2020 has challenged students and their mental health like never before.
We see around 4,000 students a year.
I don't think we've landed it perfectly by any means.
I worry about other students who maybe don't have experience with counselling services and stuff.
The support I got at university was lacklustre on the whole.
The second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic coincided with the mass return of students to UK universities. Because of this, calls in lockdown, 0 to no contact hours, and online lectures have resulted in students feeling lonely, vulnerable, and isolated. My name's Kate. I'm a first year student at the University of Edinburgh, and this has definitely not been the start to my university career that I'd expected. With Edinburgh being a home away from home for many students, some like me for the first time, I wanted to find out how the pandemic has been impacting student mental health and what the university has been doing to support their students. A recent survey from March 2020 showed that 1 in 5 students has a current mental health diagnosis. 1 in 10 of those who suffered from a condition developed it whilst at university, and about half of all students reported having thoughts of self-harm. Only 10.2% reported using the services that are offered. This is all hammered home with the saddening statistic that suicide in the student population was at an all-time high in 2019. With on average 10% of the student community in counselling, 360 appointments a week, and £8.5 million being recently spent on the new Wellbeing Centre in Bristow Square, you cannot deny that there is a demand for mental health support at the University of Edinburgh. With all this in mind, I decided to speak to Dr. Dominique Thompson, a GP and expert in mental health in young people, particularly students. I wanted to know more about what triggers mental health issues at university, and whether she thinks institutions are doing enough to help those in their care.
Whether you're looking at university support services or general practice in the NHS, everywhere the demand has gone up so much year on year. So just to give you an example, in university counselling services, there's a roughly, in many of them, 20% increase year on year in demand. So that's not just tens, that's hundreds more people asking for support each year. Broadly, the 18 to 25 year age group in the UK has probably taken the greatest hit emotionally and from a mental health point of view with COVID. So whilst absolutely rightly, we've talked a lot about the impact of COVID physically on the elderly and those with underlying conditions. In terms of mental health and impact, it's the younger adults who have had the worst outcomes so far. And I mean, it's obvious in a sense, but I'm stating the obvious, but they will also live with the impact the longest of anyone. And the young adults have been affected by things like high rates of depression, isolation, anxiety. They've also lost their jobs and income. They've had their studies disrupted. They've often had problems with where they live. And in some of the most difficult cases, but the statistics show they're also the most likely to be exposed to domestic or intimate partner violence and abuse in the home. So very sadly, the case is that young adults, students absolutely included in that group, have not had a good time in the pandemic.
What is your thoughts in general on what universities currently offer to students on a whole? Are you impressed with what you see when you investigate? Do you think there's still room for lots of improvement?
So if we're talking about student mental health and wellbeing specifically, I think that universities do offer a huge range of services and support. So in general, I think every single university in the UK will offer something. There is a huge variety between what different universities provide. So I think that one thing that's really sensible for students who are looking at universities and choosing universities to think about is partly choosing a university based on what sort of support they could provide should they ever need it, even if they don't need it yet. I think it's important to ask around and say to other students, do you think your university is a compassionate university? You know, is this a kind campus? And I know that that sounds like a little bit simplistic, but I do think it's quite a helpful way to get a sense of the place that you might want to go and study.
But what does the university have to say about all of this? What is their perspective on the provision of support here at Edinburgh? Have they made any changes since the start of the pandemic? I spoke with Andy Shanks, Head of the Mental Health Services, and Colm Harmon, Vice Principal of Students, to find out more.
Since March, we've had to radically change the way we deliver our support for students.
So what we've seen this semester in particular is a lot of increased support available through the listening service, counselling, student disability service, chaplaincy, a lot of availability of resources online as well, which again had always been a plan, but in a sense the balance was important this year. And then, really interesting things like live streaming exercise classes and so on.
Since we've come back into semester, our demand levels are back up to what they would usually be. We're doing as much as we can to see people very quickly and to keep waiting times low. Moving
away from home is tough at the best of times. And I think this year has been an exceptional challenge. What I think the university has been doing is trying to meet that. We've been working on a response on mental health and well-being actually pre-COVID.
We have a really good student mental health strategy, and there are two key aims within that strategy. The first of those is to promote positive mental health right across the university, taking a whole university approach. And the second of those is to make sure that we have services which are sufficiently resourced to respond to students quickly. Some really positive news is that we've recently been given the approval to recruit an additional 5.5 counselling posts. And in fact, our strategy is due for review this year. So we've kicked off a review process, and we're engaging with students through the Sports Union and Student Association to make sure that we have good collaboration with our student population around what we need to do differently within the strategy. But there's an organisation called Universities Scotland and an organisation called Universities UK, and we're going to be framing our strategy very much within the context of the good practice recommendations that they make. We're looking to I suppose, reshape our strategy to make sure it's congruent with the Mentally Healthy Universities report. And we don't think we need to radically change what we're doing, but we do need to make sure that our strategy, which was written in 2017, is current and is reflective of the global pandemic, and integrates all the good practice that we are aware of and that's been written.
Yet despite these seemingly impressive initiatives, the University of Edinburgh's mental health services haven't always lived up to expectations. A number of previous students who have had their own struggles with mental health in the past said that the university consistently failed to provide the proper support when they needed it most. I spoke to two students about their experiences in 2018 to 2019 and what they think is at the root of the university's failings. Aoife didn't want her face to be shown.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I am 24 years old. I graduated with a bachelor's in ancient history last year, 2019.
Did you get diagnosed before or when you were at the university?
I got diagnosed 1 year into university. I had always had issues, but it was being at university and those issues getting worse that drove me to actually go and get a diagnosis and push myself to go to the doctors.
I think I got my first diagnosis when I was about 15, maybe 14 going on 15. So I'd been dealing with it for quite a few years before starting uni.
Okay. How did you find that first initial seeking support from them?
Oh boy. Bad. I mean, this is the thing. I wasn't really functioning. So it was difficult for me to get to the point where I was reaching out to people in the first place.
I definitely did struggle at the beginning. I didn't really know where to go for support. I obviously didn't really know anyone in the city. And
I reached out first a couple of months after I was diagnosed, and I went to the counselling service and I was told that I was well enough to not need counselling because I'm very good at being functioning. So I went back a year later when everything was like the worst it's been, and the worst hopefully it will be. And then I got student counselling.
They said, oh, okay, it'll be about a 5-week wait from this kind of initial assessment until we can offer you an appointment, just because of the waiting list. And I was like, okay, 5 weeks, like with mental health services, that's not really that long compared to like a lot of waiting lists. But I didn't actually hear from them until May. And when I did hear from them in May, they offered me an appointment that was after the end of term of that academic year, so I wouldn't have been able to attend it. I kind of explained, you know, like this appointment's after my exams will have ended, and like I won't be in halls anymore, so like I won't be in Edinburgh and I won't be able to attend. And I said, I guess I just need to reschedule this appointment for like the start of the next academic year when I'll be back. And they said, well, because it's such a long time between like May and September, we actually can't hold your position. We'll just have to put you to the bottom of the waiting list and like in for a new assessment next academic year if you still want an appointment.
It's such a long process. It's just you've signed up for this, now you wait sort of situation. And for the student counselling service, it's a very short wait. You're not going to find really another free counselling service that has that short of a wait.
I do feel like as a first year, I was quite a vulnerable person that did just end up slipping through the cracks. And I worry that like if I was able to slip through the cracks, being quite aware of like how these systems work and like quite vigilant with like replying to emails and stuff, then I worry about other students who like maybe don't have experience with like counselling services and stuff, and who like really desperately need help and are also just slipping through the cracks.
It all very heavily relies on you going through and being functional enough to complete the administration stuff, which is a stretch. Like, I mean, if the problems you're having are linked to not being able to complete uni work, adding more administrative work on top of it, it's not really going to fly.
Morgan ended up dropping out last year because of her mental health.
People consistently wonder why at university there are rates of suicide going up, rates of people needing mental health support going up, general discontent. It's because it's so obvious when you're in there that you are seen as nothing other than a number in the system. And not on a personal level, like you'll know people, you'll know teachers, you'll know lecturers, you'll know personal tutors and things like that. But when it comes down to it, when you're communicating with the people that are on the administration side, when you're communicating with people that actually have the process, like the power to change things for you, it's so clear that it's not even a thought in their mind, the empathy of what that other person is going through. As an institution, it's uncaring and thoughtless a lot of the time. And it's uncaring and thoughtless to the people that most require the empathy. Everything I can think about the support I got at university was lackluster on the whole. And I look back at that period of time and I'm just like, I am amazed that I managed to survive that, frankly. Like, I was some of the worst experiences I've ever had, and some of the lowest, like the inability to function at the level that was required of me, which was just a normal level. I'm impressed that I managed to get past that, because at the end of the day, when I think about it, I was just relying on myself.
With this unique 2020 university situation that we're all experiencing, I wanted to find out how students and their mental health have been affected, and hear the experiences of those who have attempted to go through the mental health services. We spoke to 2 students, one in first year who has just started university, and a 4th year who is coming to the end of their degree. Both students didn't want to appear on camera and therefore have provided written statements which have been read by actors.
I've primarily interacted with the Student Disability Service, with whom I've had an outstanding experience. Everyone has been kind, patient, and has offered adjustments which made me feel like mental health is treated like the serious issue it is. I was offered 15 hours of one-on-one mentoring, which I feel has been beneficial. On the other hand, my experience with other services at the university has not matched this standard. Specifically, during my isolation, we were informed we received text messages or emails checking up on our well-being, which was not followed through with. This left my flatmates and I feeling the promise of mental health support was more so for appearances rather than genuine for students' well-being. I am unsure of whether others' experience has been different to mine.
I think that COVID has definitely had an impact on the services provided by the university this year. And as much as there has been improvement in terms of waiting times for counselling, I just don't think there was enough set in place for the isolation that students were inevitably going to feel. And then also for students like me who struggle with depression, I did feel like I was left alone a lot and very isolated in terms of university support. Then when I was referred to the mental health counselling service, I was given an assessment appointment and then told that I would be seen in the new year. I've heard nothing from anybody since. So it's very much like you get passed around a lot. Particularly from a personal tutor, you would expect that they would at least send some sort of email throughout the semester, particularly students that they know, based on record, that they suffer from mental health difficulties.
So what does the university have to say about all of this? I put both my experiences as a first year in halls and also those of the students that we had spoken to Andy Shanks.
See, I don't have, so for my English course, which is actually my degree, I don't have anything face-to-face.
Yeah.
And then I chose to do French and Spanish, and I get one thing in person for Spanish, but that's the only thing I have in person.
Yeah.
And I do have quite a few friends who don't have anything at all.
Yeah, and I just think that's a different sort of experience than if you were in classrooms and groups. And you were able to see other students just out and about and in cafes and study spaces and things. So in semester 2, we're really going to focus hard on this. And certainly from I'm not involved in the academic bit, but from in terms of the social experience, trying to start to do as much more outdoors.
When I went to isolation, I received a phone call from the university saying that they would be calling us back to check up on us and see how we were doing. And I think that was what they said to everyone I've talked to who's gone to isolation, but no one then received these further phone calls. Was this something that you were anything connected to?
So in university accommodation, that was run through accommodation, catering and events. That was the team that was making those phone calls. So no, I wasn't involved in managing that and in delivering that. Those weren't the services that I run.
My last question is actually about people who take leaves of absence from uni due to mental health issues. We were talking to people who have done in the past, and they said how once they take their leave of absence, this was a girl who'd waited for had taken a leave of absence for 6 months, that once you leave, the communication with the uni completely stops. Is that your current procedure at the moment, and is there any ideas about changing that, maybe just to have a bit more communication?
I've always thought that in situations where a student drops out of university or leaves university, takes a leave of absence for any period of time, that's arguably when we should communicate most with the student, because things are most difficult. And I'd say it'd be good if schools would maintain contact with a student periodically, I don't know, every fortnight, every month, just to make sure they're okay, and talk to them about what they need to do to come back into studying. Because having taken a leave of absence, I would imagine coming back in could be quite an intimidating and anxiety-provoking experience. So we need good support in that whole process from the university school, the student support team, or the academic side. But all of our services are accessible for students who are on leave of absence. So a student on leave of absence can still access the student counselling service, even if they're in China or the States. They could still access, or anywhere else, they could still access our services.
Obviously, you've been talking about how right now the current waiting list for counselling services is really positively low. We've talked to past students who feel like they've had to wait too long. We've talked to a student who said that she had to wait over 3 months for an appointment. Do you think that was just something of the past, or do you think that sometimes due to the increased amount of people demanding services, this just unfortunately happened?
Well, there's always a story behind those kind of situations. Students would never routinely wait 3 months for an appointment. So without knowing the detail of, what that student's individual circumstances are, then it'd be really hard to comment. But what we say to students is, when are you available? And if a student's only available 1 hour a week, then that might make it a bit more difficult. In fact, that would make it more difficult for us to find an appointment for them. But they still shouldn't have to wait 3 months. But so if a student says, I've got these slots that I can be seen, and they give us a number of slots, then it's much easier for us to find a slot for them to be seen more quickly. But I think we're on top of the waiting list at the moment. And as I say, students are waiting 3 weeks at the moment on average for an appointment. But if someone's got an urgent situation where we feel that there are risks, then we would see them as quickly as we can. And we often see people on the same day if we're very worried about them.
As a first year, I found it really interesting to find out about the support that the university offers. I'm not sure that I felt that all first years have been properly supported during this challenging time. There seems to be a real emphasis on it being the student's job to reach out, and where the university promises to contact them, it not really occurring. Luckily right now, I'm not struggling with my mental health badly, but I'm not sure I'd be confident in going and using the services in the future. I think there's a real issue with the waiting list being long for both the university services and the NHS, which makes you feel like you're going to get stuck between both services and neither are going to give you the help when you really need it. I really enjoyed talking to past students and finding out that there is a disparity between what the university promises and what students are receiving. The university initiatives that they are exploring seem really positive, and I enjoyed hearing about the emphasis on communicating with students and finding out what it is that they need. But whether any of those plans are going to come into fruition successfully is something that I'll be really interested to see during my university experience. I think the university can improve the communication between the different schools and also the different organisations within the university body, such as the accommodation and the mental health services. I think that they should make sure that the students always know where to go to, exploring things such as social media, but continuing to use things like emails to reach out to students who aren't on social media and aren't using technology that much, especially due to the fact that the pandemic has meant that as a first year, most of my experience has been online, and it's really nice to have some break from that and feel like you're going to get face-to-face contact.
Three things about staying well. So number one would be making lots of social connections. So making friends, meeting people. They don't just have to be friends though, that you keep forever. I'm talking about, connecting with people through doing things like volunteering, which is a really lovely thing to do because you feel good because you're doing something for people and they feel good because you've done something nice for them and you meet like-minded people. So, meet as many people as you can to build what I call a sort of spider's web of connections, because that will help you to feel more confident and feel happier generally and carry on through life doing that. So making connections is really important. I think it's important to have each day some sense of purpose. So it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It might be something like, I'm going to bake a cake today. It might be, I'm going to do some reading for my next essay, but not all of it, just prepare. It might be, I'm going to phone Granny, whatever it is, have something so that each day, because humans, we need to feel that we've achieved stuff, and whether you're a list person like me or just someone who just at the end of the day likes to feel like, I'm pretty happy with what I did there. I'll go for a walk, whatever it is, sort of tick things off in your mind so you feel good about yourself. So having a little sense of purpose for every day is really important. So I think that's really important. And then the other thing I think that's that's just great for us generally for building confidence, and is a good one for life, is to try new things. Not be afraid, whether it's meeting new people might be a bit scary, or giving a talk. When people offer you opportunities, and I talk as someone who was offered to go paddleboarding and will never be doing that again, but I said yes, I gave it a go, and it's definitely not made for me. But the point is, you feel pretty chuffed with yourself when you do something that's a bit outside your comfort zone, and you think, yeah, well, okay, I'm not doing that again, but I can do stuff, So I think that's what's important to sort of just keep, because obviously lots of people will tell you to, eat healthily and get lots of sleep. Those things are vital. But I'm talking about just the other stuff that helps us feel good.